Hey, this is Jeff Ratcliffe here. Let's talk about the value in daily fantasy for a minute. The big prizes, yeah, they're attractive, but you have to finish in the top 2% out of thousands of experts to win any real money. So even on your best day, you still feel like you're losing. Now you can play something better. Stat Hero. Stat Hero is a house-based game that combines the best of daily fantasy and survivor pools. Each Stat Hero contest lasts multiple days, but requires only one entry fee, so your money lasts longer. Yes, you can play multiple days with only one entry fee. Stat Hero gives you a smaller contest and more chances to win, and no more competing with sharks or experts ever, because your only competition is Stat Hero itself. Survive the game and download Stat Hero today and see how the face of daily fantasy has changed. Finally, a game designed for the rest of us. Stat Hero now open for NFL and NBA. For more information, please visit stathero.com. What is up? It's the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Podcast. My name is Jeff Ratcliffe, and it's Monday, December 23rd. Wow. Kenyan Drake's going to freaking win a lot of people fantasy championships. How about that? If that is in 2019, I don't know what is this year. But hey, let's tie a bow on this thing. This will be the last recap show of the 2019 fantasy football season. So let's go out in style, give you some big takeaways here. And I know some folks are still in. I'm still in it tonight. I have Mike Boone, Aaron Jones, and Kirk Cousins in a 2-quarterback championship game going tonight. So you may still be in that boat. But hey, even if you lost, you made it to the fantasy championships. That's still pretty freaking good. I know we all want to win them all, but it is really hard to win a fantasy championship. So either way, great time to take a look back at the whole season. We'll do that this week on the pod after the holiday, but also just a good time in general to look back at this week. So let's dive into it. We have a lot of games to get to. So we'll kick it off with Tampa Bay and Houston.
This is a 37-yard field goal from the left hash for Kaimi Fairbairn. The kick is on the way, and Fairbairn got it. He's 3 for 3 today in the field goal department, and that puts Houston up 23-20.
Very anticlimactic call right there. That was the game winner, and this game may not have won you very much in terms of fantasy. Wow, on the Houston side, Deshaun Watson was really good this year. He was not good for fantasy in this one. 184, 0 touchdowns against that defense, but nothing. And he did at least chip in 7 for 37 on the ground. It was a quiet day, really, for basically everybody. I mean, yes, Carlos Hyde got in the end zone. Doubt that anybody started him, but 17 for 27 on the ground, so you probably are happy you didn't start him. Deandre Hopkins was surging, but in this one, 5 for 23. Now, he did have 8 targets, but it really didn't matter. So, generally speaking, disappointing pretty much across the board there. Now, moving to the other side, now there was a lot of expectation, obviously, for Prashad Perryman. And I would say that, generally speaking, he delivered. It was a little dicey through the earlier part of the game, but he finishes with 7 for 102 in a PPR league. 17 points is pretty much, hey, I'm happy with that. You figured the touchdown regression would set in, and it did, but 12 targets in this contest, so, just fine there. Jameis, only 1 passing score, yes, 4 interceptions, but 335 through the air. He's almost at 5,000 yards. He's going to be well up there when all is said and done after last week in terms of the top passing seasons ever. I don't think, he would have to put up a crazy performance to top Breeze's record, but this is just crazy because, okay, Jameis Winston for fantasy purposes obviously was pretty good this season. This was a little bit of a letdown, no doubt about it, but it could have been a whole lot worse. But this guy is going to have a 5,000-yard passing season, and his team may not want him back next year. That's just crazy to think about. But in general, Justin Watson, if you streamed him, you got the touchdown, so that wasn't terrible. O.J. Howard, 3 for 46. I guess it's better than 3 for 32. Not much else doing there. A decent enough game out of Ronald Jones, but so inconsistent this season. I'm going to be putting together rankings this week in terms of 2020. We'll talk about it on the pod, and there are going to be guys like Ronald Jones who are going to be a little bit tough to rank. So, I'll talk you through where I land on all those guys. But anyway, let's move on to the next contest, which, of course, was the New England Patriots hanging on with no offense, essentially, and defeating the division rival Buffalo Bills.
Brady down under center. Sends a man in motion to the far side. Takes the snap, turns, hands to Burkhead, right side, knocked down, and he gets back up and into the end zone for a touchdown. He was almost on the ground, kept his balance, and powers ahead into the end zone for the go-ahead score.
It's a shame he didn't stay healthy this season because Rex Burkhead, obviously, with a lot of potential in that offense. Not that anybody used him, and really, hopefully, he didn't use much of anything. Julian Edelman banged up in this one. I mean, 5 for 72, at least you got that. But yikes, not much doing there on the New England side. I tell you what, Josh Allen, though, a little bit surprising here. He was able to have a decent day. I don't think anybody used him because of the matchup, and rightfully so. It was a tough matchup, but he made a couple, really impressive throws in this contest. 208, but the fact that he threw for 2 passing scores and then did the additional 43 on the ground, decent enough game. Of course, we also saw a decent enough game from Cole Beasley in this one. A little bit of a surprise that he was able to go out there and put up 7 for 108. John Brown had the long touchdown, but that was really all he did. He was shadowed by Stephon Gilmore in this contest, and a whole heck of a lot of nothing on the ground, as we would have expected from Devin Singletary. Just a tough matchup. Not a knock on Singletary whatsoever there. All right, let's move on to the final game of the Saturday slate, and of that of course, being the 49ers hanging on to beat the Rams.
Garoppolo takes the snap, he's back to pass against a 5-man rush. Garoppolo looking, heaves it up down the field, got a man wide open, that's caught by Sanders, down around the 25. Emmanuel Sanders got free in between the secondary. He's down at the 23, and the Niners are in field goal range.
Tough one there for Taylor Rapp, the safety. A feel for guys like that. Hey, we all make mistakes, but in a critical moment for that young player, that was a tough one. And, if you started Emmanuel Sanders, you basically got nothing with the exception of that play. He was under wraps for a good chunk of this game with Jalen Ramsey on him. But he ends up with 3 for 61. George Kittle was quiet for a good chunk of the game as well, but finished with 5 for 79 and a score, so solid enough there. Raheem Mostert continued to be the most effective back in that backfield, got in the end zone, 11 for 53, But, if you started him, could have been a whole lot worse. Jimmy G didn't really give you much of anything in this one either. 248 and 1. But, of course, if you're a 49ers fan, you really don't care about that. That was a big win in a tricky game. The Rams came in and they played tough. But, of course, they are officially eliminated from playoff contention. Now, on the Rams side, this was interesting because Todd Gurley, again, getting in the end zone, again, without being very efficient. 15 for 48, not that good. But if you played him, you don't really care because he scored 2 touchdowns. So there you go. In terms of the receivers, we did see both Cooper Kupp and Brandon Cooks get in the end zone, but neither one of them topped 40 receiving yards because basically all the receiving yards went to Robert Woods and Tyler Higbee. Woods 8 for 117, Higbee 9 for 104. Tyler Higbee, I mean, if this trend does not continue into next year, I'm going to be very surprised. He has shown in a 4-week stretch. Now, granted, they were mostly good matchups. I wouldn't say this was necessarily a good matchup, obviously, in this contest, but mostly good matchups. But still, could we have seen Gerald Everett do that if Higbee was out? I highly doubt it. I think Everett's numbers would have went up, but I don't think we would have seen him like this. I think they just finally got Higbee in a position where he had the opportunity to seize. He seized it, and now his arrow is pointing up. I mean, he's a top 10 fantasy tight end now, and that's really just based on 4 weeks of production. I stuck to my guns on this one. I know that a lot of folks in the fantasy industry moved their rankings down for Higbee. I stayed because I did catch some wind that Everett wasn't necessarily going to be full go in this one. He only ended up playing 4 snaps. He had 1 target. He didn't catch it. So that was good news there. But we'll see what happens going forward for this team. There's going to be some changes, no doubt about it, when a team makes a Super Bowl one year and then doesn't make the playoffs the next year. But generally speaking, I think we'll still get plenty of fantasy value out of this roster. All right, let's move on to Sunday. And we'll kick things off with Well, I could do it out of order. I don't always have to do it in order. I'm in the Philadelphia area, so at the top of my list here, the Eagles defeating the Dallas Cowboys. Tough loss there for Dallas, but of course, the NFC East will not be settled until this Sunday upcoming with the 4 o'clock sleep. But anyway, let's dive into this game.
If you want to talk about a team win, this was definitely a team win. Offense, defense, and special teams. But probably the giveaway takeaway margin for us helped us sustain in this game.
As Eagles head coach Doug Peterson on the victory after this contest, and this was an interesting game, no doubt about it. Philly really beat up and battered, and Zach Ertz even leaving this game. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside getting banged up in this game. But offensively, we really saw 2 young players emerging, those players being Miles Sanders and Dallas Goedert. Dallas Goedert, revenge name, 9 catches on 10 targets, 91 yards, a touchdown. Two times in a row, he's just beat up on the Cowboys here, and this was even better than back in week 7. And then Miles Sanders, 20 for 79. All right, well, we'll take 4 yards a carry, just under 4 yards a carry. But the touchdown certainly helps. And then when you go 5 for 77 as a receiver, yeah, that'll do. That will certainly do. And if you happen to have to play Carson Wentz, 319 and a touchdown is certainly not terrible there out of Carson Wentz. But terrible, well, we want terrible. There were some terrible fantasy performances out of the Cowboys. Amari Cooper at one point was not benched, but he was put on the sideline for Tavon. I can't make this up. Why would you put Tavon Austin out there over Amari Cooper? I have no friggin' idea, but he goes 4 catches on 12 targets for 24 yards. Michael Gallup was the better play, 5 for 98 for him. Zeke was not his usual Zeke self against the Eagles. He just 13 for 47 on the ground, and he did have 7 catches, so he kind of bails you out a little bit in PPR, so it wasn't a complete disaster, but 7 for 37 as a receiver. Dak, well, a bit of a complete disaster for fantasy, just 265 passing yards, just 7 rushing yards for Dak Prescott. Moving right along here to the Falcons defeating the Jaguars.
Here comes Allison. I got Hooper and Stalker bunched to the right. Zacchaeus to the left. Ryan goes under center with the eye. Smith and Allison behind him. Cadre the carry, and he will burrow into the end zone for the Atlanta touchdown.
There you go, right there. Well, it was really a lot of Devonta Freeman in this one, though. 13 for 53 in the score as a runner, but it was really his ability as a receiver in this one, which we hadn't entirely seen. I feel like we haven't fully seen him as a receiver since earlier in his career. But 9 for 74 and a touchdown for him. You saw a little bit of a bounce back here, or, getting back on track for Austin Hooper. 7 for 82 for him, but it was all Julio. Another big season for Julio Jones. And really, he's fantastic. He is really fantastic. 15 targets, 10 catches, $1.66 for him. So obviously a rock solid play right there. Matt Ryan finished okay. In terms of the fantasy season with 384, just 1 touchdown pass, but 384 at least does help you out there. On the Jacksonville side, the wheels have completely come off here. There was really not much to get excited about at all. I do think when it's all said and done and we look back, we say, yeah, Leonard Fournette was a pretty solid season. He had 18 touches in this one. He had 71 rushing yards, 3 catches, 34 yards as a receiver. So solid enough. DJ Chark gets back on the field, does a whole heck of a lot of nothing. So hopefully it didn't roll him out there with too much confidence. 2 for 18. He did have 2 end zone targets, but didn't convert either of them. And, we'll see what happens, next year. I don't believe that the Jags are going to view Gardner Minshew as a long-term starter, but we shall see. Either way, 181 and a touchdown there for Minshew in this contest. All right, moving right along, and we'll go over to – this is a surprising game, Baltimore and Cleveland.
13th play of the drive coming up. Ingram sets to the left of Jackson, who wants to throw out of the gun. Jackson steps up, swing pass. Ingram has it at the 5. He can stroll in for the touchdown. Mark Ingram left wide open on the flat. And they are dancing in the end zone in Cleveland.
Ingram did score there, but he was banged up later on. I wouldn't expect to see him until, well, the second round of the playoffs, because they're probably going to rest some starters anyway, and then they have the bye. So either way, 8 for 55 on the ground for Ingram, and 2 catches, 36, and the touchdown as a receiver. A lot of Mark Andrews in this one, 6 for 93 and 2 scores. And really why I say this was such an interesting contest is, hey, Baltimore came out, and it's not like they were flat, but they just weren't necessarily moving the balls we're accustomed to. And then they flipped a switch, and then they were, the most electric offense in the league, just like that. It's pretty amazing. 238 and 3, which you would say, that's pretty good there. That's solid. I'll take that out of my quarterback. Oh, yeah, and he has 103 rushing yards. So, Lamar, this is a historic season for Lamar. The question, though, will he play next week? I don't think he will, but we shall see what they decide to do over the course of the week. I really don't think they'll play him. Expect some RG3 in some DFS lineups. Anyway, on the other side, Jarvis, 7 for 74. OBJ did get in the end zone. Too little, too late for him. 4 for 44 in the touchdown for him. Baker just 193, and he did have 2 passing scores, but I don't think anybody ran him out there. And it was a bit of a quiet day. Actually surprised to see Nick Chubb with just 15 for 45. All right, next up, pretty exciting one here. The New Orleans Saints going into Tennessee, taking down the Titans 38-28.
Breeze under center here, I formation. Josh Hill motions left to right. Breeze is going to look to throw. Rolling to his right, throws, and it's caught. And guess who? Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas set the record yesterday. Unbelievable. 12 on 17 for a $136 and a touchdown. This was an amazing season. We witnessed greatness this season. I don't know. I mean, granted, I didn't think he could top what he did last year from a catch standpoint because last year was so monstrous. I don't know if we ever see a season like this again. And it's not just the catch number is crazy, but it's how few targets he's actually done it on that is even more impressive. I mean, when you consider, a guy to have 140 catches, you would think, what do you have to do that, right? 200 targets, something in that range. Well, Thomas doesn't have 200 targets. By PFF numbers right now, 145 catches, okay, right? We have him at 172. 172 targets. Basically, that means if Drew Brees throws him the ball, it is going to be caught. That is unreal. We witnessed greatness this season with Michael Thomas. If you own him for fantasy, you certainly know that. Heck of a year for him. This was so much fun. It was also fun to see Alvin Camara get in the end zone again. We forgot what that looked like, right? Well, of course, he does it in style. 2 touchdowns for him here. 11 for 80 on the ground, and he looked like Camara in this one, so that was good. And 6 for 30, so he adds 9 PPR points there. As a receiver, Drew Brees, solid as usual, 279 and 3 in this contest. So on the other side, the Ryan Tannehill thing, I mean, generally speaking, it continued in this one. And I've been kind of waiting for not necessarily him to just have a complete collapse. I do buy into Ryan Tannehill as being an NFL starter, but I just thought we would see some touchdown regression. We're not seeing that. 272 and 3 for him in this one. So he continues to put up decent numbers. Even without Derrick Henry, they were able to move the ball, generally speaking, with no problem. You did see a lot of Tajay Sharp in this one. 5-4, wait for it, 69 and 2 touchdowns for Tajay Sharp. Not a whole lot of A.J. Brown, but if you started him, he bails you out with a 49-yard rushing touchdown. Gotta love that. Otherwise, just the 1 for 34 as a receiver. And, hey, with Dion Lewis is not Derrick Henry, so I don't think anybody expected him to go out and have a massive day. I think if you started him, I mean, you're probably disappointed by it because he doesn't score a touchdown. But 15 for 68, it's 4.5 yards per carry. He only had the 1 catch, though. Maybe you'd hope for more catches out of Dion Lewis. Anyway, let's move on here. Surprise blowout. I didn't think it was going to be this big of a blowout. The Colts Panthers.
Brissett hands off to Marlon Mack. He's in there. Touchdown, Marlon Mack. Touchdown, INDY. 6-4 on the board for the Colts. And now it's the Colts 20 and Carolina 3 with 5:14 to go in the second quarter.
Yeah, there you go. that was one of the easier calls of the week last week, that Marlon Mack was going to have a bounce back performance because, well, the Panthers just simply can't defend the run. So take advantage of it. That's one of the themes that we see in fantasy football. Identify the trend and exploit the trend. So hopefully we're able to do that with Marlon Mack. 16 for 95, touchdown for him. We did see Jordan Wilkins also get in the end zone, and Nyheim Hines got in the end zone twice as a returner. So if you played the Colts defense, that worked out pretty well. It wasn't the intention, right? The intention was to take advantage of Will Grier. Well, hey, it worked out pretty well regardless. Otherwise, you really didn't get a whole heck of a lot of anything here. Just 3 catches for 26 from T.Y. Hilton. Jack Doyle, predictably, we said, hey, this was going to be a tough matchup for Jack Doyle, and he went 2 for 17. So hopefully it didn't end up streaming him. Now, the other side was certainly complicated because DJ Moore left the game with a concussion. I did start DJ Moore in a game, and I got a whole heck of a lot of nothing. In that half-point PPR league, I got 0.6 points from DJ Moore. So, yeah, that was wonderful. But if you started Christian McCaffrey, wow. 13 for 54. All right. No. 15 catches. 15 freaking catches for 119. Christian McCaffrey sets the single season running back receptions mark yet again, second year in a row, back-to-back 100-catch seasons. Wow. When he was being drafted, I called him the best receiver in that class. And I didn't mean best receiving running back. I meant best receiver. He is showing that. He is just phenomenal, and he was pretty much all we have to talk about there. So let's move on to Miami and Cincinnati.
Getting those guys ready. I thought they do a really good job, and that's been the case really, throughout the season with injuries and, new players. And they do a good job from that standpoint, getting those guys ready.
That's Dolphins head coach Brian Flores on the coaching staff there. And I got to tell you, I actually buy in on Brian Flores over the long term. And this is just a tough situation, right? You're handed a roster that is, even as the season is going on, being dismantled. You have that weird, here's a quarterback. You want a first round quarterback. Here's Rosen. You want him? Because we don't want him. We're the Cardinals. We're going to take Kyler. And you kind of make do with what you have. Your secondary completely depleted. And I mean, they won a couple games. So it is what it is. There's a lot of fight there, though. And you got to like some of the pieces here. I mean, the breakout season continued for Devontae Parker. Only 5 catches because he had 13 targets, only 5 catches. All right, it is what it is. But 111 receiving yards for him and a touchdown. And Mike Gesicki showing the late season breakout as well. 2 touchdowns for him in this one. 6 for 82 and 2 scores. Mike Gesicki getting big. And I was against this idea of starting Ryan Fitzpatrick. And I'll tell you why. If I have my fantasy championship on the line, I'm not getting cute. And starting Ryan Fitzpatrick is the definition of getting cute. And this is one of those instances where it did work. All right. So if you did it, okay, you outsmarted fantasy this time. Don't think you can do it again, though. 418 and 3 touchdown passes for Fitz magic. Myles Gaskin getting a lot of work in this one as well. 16 for 55 and a touchdown. He's the better runner. He's not better. He's not that great, but he's a better runner than Patrick Laird is for sure. Moving to the Cincy side, and of course, Joe Mixon was sick in this one. I did end up moving my rankings. That news came out pretty late, so I probably didn't move him until like 12:30. But I moved him down to right at the fringe of the RB1s. He did have volume in this one, but he was, generally speaking, ineffective. 21 for 50. 2.4 per carry, 2 for 23 as a receiver, but the receivers were the big story here. I mean, you had a monstrous performance out of Tyler Boyd, 9 for 128 and 2 scores. You also had John Ross out there, 6 for 84 for John Ross. The 2 tight ends both got in the end zone. Andy Dalton showing fight in this one, 396 and 4 for Andy Dalton, and what is going to be his second to last start, very likely here for the Bengals. I mean, you don't see any other way with them now on the clock that they're not taking Joe Burrow. So there you go. They had some fight in them, though. So I got a little tip of the hat there to the Bengals for fighting to the end in this contest. All right, let's go to the Jets and Steelers.
he did a really good job this week of really kind of, staying level. I kept talking to him and asking him where he was, and he was great all week long, just focused on what he had to do. He knew we were going to make sure that he had opportunities to affect this game, and try to give him the ball, give him some chances to make some plays. I thought he did a good job of taking him what they were giving him. He knew what kind of defense we were playing. He knew this was a really good defense. He knew there wasn't going to be a ton of 20-yard runs.
There you go. Adam Gase on one Le'Veon Bell. And this one, the revenge game for Le'Veon Bell, and certainly a tough contest against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. The defense really what's holding them in this, but Bell gets 25 carries, 72 yards. Yeah, again, tough sledding there, but 4 for 21 as a receiver as well. So 29 touches for him in this one. Made it a priority to get him the ball. Otherwise, you didn't get much of anything, right? Had our Robbie Anderson touchdown, and that was about it. And then on the other side, weird things going on. Duck Hodges benched really quickly into the game, and then Mason Rudolph banged up, so Duck back out there. And boy, Duck looked over his head. Rudolph did have the touchdown pass to Deontay Johnson, who looked really good. I can't wait to see what these wide receivers, if you think about that, it is kind of sexy with Juju, Deontay Johnson, and James Washington with Ben under center. That's pretty sexy right there. That's exciting for next year. And James Conner banged up again. Go figure. All right, moving on to the next contest, the Giants and Redskins.
3rd and goal at the 3. Jones in a shotgun, Barkley to his right. He calls out signals, takes the snap, he's back to throw. Fires one right, touchdown Giants, Peyton Smith, and they win it in overtime. 2nd touchdown catch for Smith, Jones' 5th touchdown pass of the ball game, and the Giants win it in overtime. 11 plays, 66 yards on the drive, and the Giants are victorious.
Yeah, there you go. Daniel Jones, 352 and 5. I think he could be something maybe next year. We'll talk about that later in the week. But you got the monster game from Saquon Barkley. Really, his best fantasy performance of his career. 22 for 189 and a score on the ground. 4 for 90 and a score as a receiver. Caden Smith was the 3 for 32 on steroids, 6 for 35 and 2 touchdowns for him this week. You also had Sterling Shepard get in the end zone, 6 for 76 for Sterling Shepard in this one. And Golden Tate, 6 for 96, didn't score, but 10 targets for Tate. On the other side, Dwayne Haskins was banged up with what is being called a high ankle sprain. So you did see some Case Keenum in this one. Haskins ended up tossing 2 touchdown passes, though, before going out. Steven Sims, was this the Steven Sims breakout game? He'd been already trending up as it was, 64 yards, 6 for 64, 2 touchdowns, big time there. And, hey, Terry McLaurin was a little dinged up in this game, but 7 for 86, solid enough in a PPR. You'll certainly take that. All right, let's move along to the next contest on the slate. That, of course, being Denver taking down the Lions.
Straight I formation, slot right. They handed off Philip Lindsey straight ahead, and Lindsey's loose, 20-15. Lindsey inside the 10, high steps inside the 5. Touchdown, Denver!
That's a nice sounding broadcast right there. They get the mics on the field and everything. That's beautiful. Phil Lindsey, another easier call, 19 for 109 and a touchdown. So if you played him, you got to like that, especially after last week. This is just a really good matchup to take advantage of. Otherwise, not a whole lot. Will Drew Lock be the future for this team? I'm not necessarily convinced that's going to be the case either. Decent enough connection with Cortland Sutton, but this was a down game for Sutton if you played him. 5 for 41, not that good. Deshawn Hamilton ended up getting in the end zone. I'm happy because I took overs on Deshawn Hamilton's receiving props, but it didn't do anybody any good for fantasy purposes. And speaking of not doing anybody any good, well, that was a bulk of what you got from Detroit in this contest. Yes, Kenny Golladay did get in the end zone, 6 for 66, so solid enough fantasy day there. We did see Kerryon Johnson out there. Bo Scarborough managed to play. It was a complete mess. 10 for 42 for Kerryon Johnson. He had a catch as well. The David Blau era will soon be over. We'll be back to Matty Stafford. before we know it. Otherwise, pretty much a lost season for a good chunk of this team for fantasy purposes with all the injuries. Injuries this year, brutal. No doubt about it. All right, Oakland Chargers.
Washington's in, fresh back, cuts, hits, end zone, touchdown Raiders! Opening drive, third quarter, staying alive. That's the theme today, and the Raiders are staying alive so far. All four of the things that had to happen today happened, and now the Raiders win this, and they'll go to Denver with a chance to be the 6th seed in the AFC.
Unbelievable if that happens, by the way. Brent Musburger on the call, but wow. I'm like, how the heck are they still in the hunt? They're in the hunt. They are in the hunt. DeAndre Washington, though, you heard the touchdown. Monster workload, 25 touches, 23 for 85 on the ground. All right, but a score. And he has 2 for 21 as a receiver. In terms of the receivers, we saw Hunter Renfro get back on the field, and he had himself a day. Man, goes out 7 for 107 and a touchdown. You did get a rushing score out of Derek Carr. Not that you very likely used him unless it was a 2-quarterback league. 291 and 1 for Derek Carr. I'd say that overall, though, you look at Derek Carr this season, he kind of has salvaged his dynasty outlook. For a little while there, it was almost like, ooh, can we even roster this guy in a dynasty league? I think you can. And I do think that overall the improvements the team has made this year is going to be beneficial for Derek Carr in the long term. Anyway, moving on. Keenan Allen just short of a receiving touchdown on the other side. Goes 5 for 71. That receiving touchdown sure would have helped for yours truly, who had Keenan Allen in a crucial game. 2 rushing scores for Melvin Gordon, but only 15 rushing yards. Did catch 6 balls, though, for 32, and on the other, you also had Austin Eckler with 5 catches for 58. Hunter Henry, I thought looked fine in this one as well. So you had Hunter Henry go out there 5 for 45. And I know people are going to complain about that, but it is better than 3 for 32. All right, on to Arizona and Seattle.
First and goal, pitches it to Drake, running right. Drake is into the end zone for a second touchdown today, his 6th in the last 2 games, and the Cardinals may have just put the Seahawks away with 4:18 to go in the fourth quarter. It is 26-13 with the extra point pending. Every year, there's a guy who comes out of the woodwork and ends up winning people fantasy championships. That guy this year is Kenyan Drake. 24 for 166 and 2 for Kenyan Drake. Yeah, 3 catches for 18 for him as well. A monster in this one, and really all they needed because, you had, Fitzgerald had the nifty touchdown, but you also had Kyler Murray get banged up, so we'll keep an eye on him for this next week. And that was about it. And really injuries across the board on this one. You also had the running backs. The entire backfield was basically wiped out for the Seahawks in this one. We know they're already without Rashad Penny. You had CJ Prosise go down and Chris Carson go down in this contest. Both of them out and very likely will not play. Both could be done for the year. They're even bringing in Marshawn Lynch, Robert Turbin, guys who know the offense. So rough situation there, but Carson ends up 8 for 40 and 1 for 20. Even the Jacob Hollister thing, I guess it was good enough if you rolled with him, but 5 for 64. Again, it's better than 3 for 32. Otherwise, nothing. Nothing out of Russell Wilson, 169 and 1. Nothing out of Tyler Lockett, 1 for 12. Nothing out of DK Metcalf. Literally nothing. Shadowed by Patrick Peterson, mind you, in this one. And I thought that was really Peterson's best game of the season. So, yeah, rough one. All right, let's round it out here. The final game on the slate for the weekend. Kansas City defeating the Bears.
Shotgun snap to Mahomes. Quick toss to Williams out of the backfield. Up the left sideline at the 5. Breaks the Kwiatkowski tackle and storms down the sideline into the end zone for a touchdown. He left Kwiatkowski pounding the turf in frustration as he broke the tackle at the 5 and took it in for 6. 23-3. Kansas City with a lead.
Yeah, Damian Williams back on the field and kind of effective. Not that anybody was using him, but 16 for 65, 3 for 27, and that score that you heard there, of course, Travis Kelce's freaking good, and it's just so much fun to watch him play, especially with Mahomes on the field. 8 for 74 and a touchdown for him. Nothing really doing out of the receivers. Ty Freak, if you used him 5 for 72, it could have been worse. but they didn't really, it was a tougher matchup. I did point that out for Mahomes, and they didn't really put up the big-time passing numbers that you may have hoped for. But 251 and 2 for Mahomes, but adds the rushing score, so bails you out with a decent enough fantasy day as a result. Moving on to the Chicago side, and hey, Allen Robinson, the season, when we look back, I think we're going to be very impressed. I know that people may have been a little let down here by 6 for 53, but he did have 11 targets in this one. It wasn't like Anthony Miller, who for the last almost month and a half, he's been a top 10 fantasy wideout. He had 1 catch for 2 yards. I mean, it could have been a lot worse for Allen Robinson owners. David Montgomery, despite the good matchup, only 13 for 57. They just weren't able to get the run established in this contest. And Trubisky, not the best end to his season here, at least the fantasy season. 157 and zero passing touchdowns. He had 20 yards on the ground, so whatever. Anyway, that does it for us today. So let me set you up here for the rest of the week. So I'm taking tomorrow off from the pod, but we will have something special over at PFF.com. I'm going to do a little piece about what we learned here in 2019 fantasy football. So keep your eyes peeled for that at PFF.com. We'll be back with the pod after the holiday. So we'll do a Thursday pod and a Friday pod where we'll talk a little bit on Thursday about what we learned and look forward to 2020. Friday, though, we're going to preview the slate for DFS purposes. I'm going to do a deep dive on DFS. And if you don't really play DFS, this is the best week to play it. I'm not saying put thousands of dollars in. Like, especially, hey, if you're listening right now, you probably won your fantasy championship or you finished second. So you made a little bit of dough. Take a little bit of that and put it into DFS and have some fun this weekend, because it is a fun weekend if you're paying attention and you know what you're doing. In the meantime, at Jeff Ratcliffe on Twitter and Instagram. PFF.com is the website. So I will catch you on the flip side for another edition of the pod. For PFF, I'm Jeff Ratcliffe, and I'm out of here.